heads up that anytime you want to make a quantum leap into another version or another identity of self, it is going to encompass really diving in deep to understand what that self-concept is what that box or boundary line is that you've created that says, this is who I am, this is what I do, and break down those walls, reconstruct a new box. If you're searching around for your purpose and there's still something blocking you, or you just can't seem to burst that bubble into the new version of yourself that you imagine that is full of purpose, then this video is for you. I'm going to be sharing with you one of the tools that I use to help me overcome multiple shifts into my purpose. And as I gained even more momentum and deepened into those shifts of identity, there was this one thing that I needed to work with in order to get to the transformation that I was seeking. I remember when I was first stepping into my purpose, it was, I don't know, like 2017-ish, I think. And by the way, real quick sidebar, when I say purpose, I really look at it through two different lenses. To me, there is purpose, and then there is soul purpose. The purpose I'm talking about is soul purpose. Now, I want you to think that purpose in general is maybe something that you came here as, and it could be like a universal thing, something that you came here to experience. And that is that. Like it should be super simple, and it shouldn't require a lot out of you. Now, the soul purpose for me is something that may require you to do multiple leaps of faith, multiple acts of faith, work in tandem with the universe. It's very much a spiritual-led journey because it's a soul purpose. Your soul has to take the driver's seat, and you have to be willing to let it take the driver's seat on that kind of venture. Now, going back to purpose, I'm just going to share what I think my purpose is as like the universal. I just came here in a human body to experience reality and to live in joy. That is, to me, what my purpose is. Now, the soul purpose is something that I came here in a body to share with others, to collaborate, to receive the wisdom through many lessons learned through different relationship dynamics, and could be even just spontaneous downloads, divine downloads shared with me that I want to share with you. That's soul purpose. In general, the soul purpose to me is what is pointing toward the true north of wanting to serve others and to expand not only myself, because inherently that will happen, but also to help others expand wider into their true essence of themselves, from going from a limited version of how they perceive themselves to the more fuller expanded self. We're going to kind of break down different aspects of self because it is so important to kind of understand really how dynamic we are as beings and where the sticking points are that hold us back from being able to expand deeper into that soul purpose, where we get lots of fulfillment, where we get lots of abundance. I always like to think that as you step further into serving the world at large, serving the collective, and collective could mean a small community of people that you're serving. It doesn't have to be millions of people. I don't want you to think there's quantity and numbers when we use the term community. But knowing how self really works, you can then begin to manipulate and make that mold malleable as you go along in your journey. So today's tool, we're going to talk about identity, because this is a big one. When you're stepping into your purpose, your soul purpose, typically that involves a shift in identity and self-concept. When we look at the word identity, the other word entity is highlighted. Entity is highlighted because we are so many aspects of self. There are many different entities of self rolled into one identity. I try not to even use the word identity, because anytime we fixate a label on something, it becomes fixed. And identity is really so fluid, and the more you allow it to be fluid, the more you will gain from the experience of being able to step further and further and further into other expanded versions of yourself, okay? Typical of my spiritual toolbox tools, the style is always one word with another word maybe bolded in there or another word hidden in there that can provide other layers of meanings. The word identity, like this whole nugget of wisdom came to me as I was shifting into my soul purpose for one of the bigger quantum leaps I've made ever in my life. And this word really helped me to work with the concept that I can lay down old versions of me, and even what other societal pressures or societal figures, or even people in your family or friend group that may expect you to be a certain way in a certain identity. Being able to transcend that comes from understanding how many facets and aspects or entities of self we truly have. So let's just start to break that down a little bit. We already have to agree that we live in a quantum universe. This is measurable. We know this. I mean, yes, there are theories, but there's a lot of hard-based evidence where that's concerned too. So I just say, yes, we are quantum beings living in a quantum universe. So therefore, we're multidimensional in two respects. In the very in physical, yes, we are multidimensional from a level of a perspective of a reality, but also in that more conceptual sense, the figurative sense that we have multidimensional aspects of self, multi-talented, multi-dimensional passions and hobbies and work. So we have to allow that. Why is that? Because as quantum source creators that we are inherently unlimited. There are only certain things within our environment, within our society, and within our self-concept that create limitations or box us in. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that so you have a deeper understanding. We have to understand and accept that oftentimes our soul purpose extends beyond our current version or concept of self. We're going to talk a little bit deeper about that as well. So let's just talk about the different entities of self. Well, from a quantum perspective, we have past version of self, present version of self, and future version of self. Okay, so we already have three there. And then we have our inner child. The inner child very much is along for the journey the entire time of our lives. So we have that. Then we also have, this is more through the spiritual lens, we have our higher self and soul monad and Christ itself. And there's just so many more layers that can go unfolding from there. In fact, this is a book that I loved during one of my first awakenings. I think it was 15 years ago or something, but it's pretty heady. It's called Soul Integration. It's really dense. This is not one of those spiritual fluff books. It's how does the universe work kind of books. Very no nonsense too at the same time. But that's why I liked it, because it was here's how the universe works, and here's how everything works, and it helps you navigate this spiritual ascension process. But anyway, just kind of pulling a little snippet from here. I typically in my work only focus on the higher self, because most of the time that's all that's really relevant in the day-to-day. But I mean, we could even go on from that. According to Salva Kelly, we have the physical body, emotional body, mental body, astral body, etheric body, causal body, the soul, the oversoul, the monad, the Buddhic or Christ itself, the God self that is individualized, and then the universal God self from there. This is, by the way, in the chapter, all the different dimensions and densities. So those correlate with the different dimensions from that kind of theory. Very interesting. So I'm just sharing all this because it opens up this concept that whoa, we're even more beyond what we even see, okay? And then from the day-to-day in our human existence, we do have the ego self or entity of self. We have the mind, the body, and the heart. Okay, so already that's a huge volume of selves, a network of entities of self. We are kind of like a Swiss Army knife. That's a really good way of looking at identity. Now I want to speak real quick from my card and share with you the snippet as an intro, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper in, and then there's a little practice I want you to do at the end. Identity is fluid. We are quantum beings living in a quantum universe, and as such, we have many different entities of self we can be aware of. The identity is something you can think of as a Swiss Army knife. Various aspects of the whole that make up your entire being, each one serving a purpose for certain parts of our lives. For example, the past, present versions of ourselves, the inner child, higher self, etc. Here's the problem. Holding too close to a rigid identity stifles soul growth and is problematic when the identity you currently hold no longer serves you. So that's kind of the explanation behind entity in the word identity. So I hope that helps you just quickly shift back into realizing that you are more than what you may perceive you are. It all kind of comes down to concept of self. This is really important. All right, when it comes to concept of self, we can never be or truly attain anything outside of what we think we are. It's kind of like we create a boundary line, and then beyond that, we can't see. It's darkness. Okay, so that's how self-concept works. When I was getting ready to launch my conscious healing course, which is all about finding out what blocks and limiting beliefs and anything else that is holding you back that you need to heal. It was all about helping you overcome those things and truly heal them so that you can get to the transformation you're desiring. I remember on sales calls and talking to people and trying to launch and sell this course and get people in. They would want transformations like more abundance, or to attract the twin flame, or whatever the case may be. Maybe they want a promotion at work. So when I would talk to them about these transformations they're seeking, I was trying to help them identify that they have certain blocks standing in front of that transformation, and the only way on the other side and the only way out is through it. And unfortunately, trying to sell people on healing yourself versus go out and buy another course that promises these kind of other transformations through more like physical, logical tools, I would just cringe when they'd be like, well, your course looks really good and like it looks amazing actually, and so many people need these things, but I'm just not ready to invest in something like that. I just want to take so-and-so's course that guides you through how to attract your soulmate kind of journey. Or I just want to take this business course that promises, 10K months. I just cringed when they would go running in that direction because the truth and the reality is you cannot extend beyond that boundary line that you created for yourself of your identity. You can't extend beyond that. But the good news is you can move that boundary line. That boundary line is not fixed as long as you don't let it to be fixed. And that is why I'm teaching you this tool to help you become aware of these dynamics, because the more you stay fixated on your identity, or you're attached to the identity that the society, the people, the community around you expects you to be because you've always kind of been that way or something, then you will stay there. Because that boundary line is created. You have to extend it. But in order to extend it, you have to work with a few other things in the mix. So let's go back to the self-concept. The ego is always going to put you into a box. It's all about identity. In fact, it's kind of like the director behind the identity. It's going to dictate or tell you, course correct you, steer you to stay within this box because it thinks that that's kind of its purpose. That's the untamed, unchecked ego. But after you learn this concept, and after I learned this concept, I started to work with the ego and tell it had different roles and responsibilities, yet still, we will still kind of get caught up in this. Before I go deeper into that, I want to just shift gears and give you a little timeline snapshot of all of the different transformations that I've made over the years. My identity has shape-shifted 100 times. I'm not kidding you. This is something that I know very well about the identity, and allowing it to be fluid, because otherwise you will hold yourself back. And when you hold yourself back, you hold yourself back from your purpose. If you hold yourself back from your purpose, you're holding yourself back from being able to help other people who could be impacted by your zone of genius, by your magic and your light, really. So in the beginning, when I was in high school, I very much was an artist. I got into these extra artist classes, and I had like my first art exhibition. So I very much loved being an artist, and I really wanted to be it, but societal pressures, just the whole like artists don't make money, I then pursued commercial graphic design. So I went from artist to designer, and then graduated college, did all that. And then fast forward about 10 years into my career, I go through Dark Night of the Soul. Man, it was intense. And at the time I had like a divorce. It was like a whole other life. Now I look back at it, I feel like it was a whole different lifetime altogether, because it feels so different than where I'm at today. But I went from designer to artist again, because after all this turmoil and upheaval, like I got divorced, like I quit a soul-sucking job, and it was a really toxic environment. And I decided to sort of like couch surf and watch people's houses for a while to go on a self-discovery phase. And I returned back to what made me happy, art. And I founded a new medium that I work with, which is yarn. I do yarn installations too. So then I went from designer back to artist, and I had a few different art shows. It was a fun journey. I got to explore that passion again. But after that, it was like, well, not really making lots of money here. And while this was great, and I was able to lean on some really fabulous people who supported me during that time, bills and whatnot, So, okay, went from artist to brand designer this time. I came back to my career as a graphic designer and up-leveled to a more specialist role, because I had learned I've just absorbed a lot of different skills within the realm of graphic design. And so it kind of made me multifaceted anyway, and multidisciplinary. And so because of that, I was able to really understand all the different touch points a brand needs. And so went to brand designer, and I did get a little bit of a pay increase, so that was great. And then around this time, this is after my starseed awakening, I like to call it. In 2017, I went deep on the starseed rabbit hole. If you don't know what that is, it's fine. Just as a sidebar. But if you're a starseed, you know what I'm talking about. Wink, wink. Okay. I decided to launch an apparel brand called Starseed that I use as a medium to inspire and empower people through clothes and through stickers, through mantras, through affirmations, and any of the tools like this that serve me during my spiritual journey, I wanted to share with others. So I created Starseed, and then I became this other identity, a brand or an apparel designer. And within that, I became a new business owner, a founder. Like sometimes I didn't even know what to put in my title because it was like 10 different things. And at the same time, I became a content creator and brand ambassador to promote and to show the world that this thing existed, and to also use my channel as a means of continuing to inspire and empower people. Okay, and then I had a third job as a customer experience associate. So this is when I worked at Lyft, and it was a whole different identity shift, because I was communicating instead of working with creatively and pushing pixels, as I like to say. I up-leveled in communication skills. I learned the importance of communication and authenticity in handling, problems in people's problems, and nurturing connections. So customer experience was kind of not what I saw coming for me, but it was really good for my journey. Okay, and then from there, anytime there's this like boop, 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 this line indicates a huge quantum leap I went through. Okay, I went from brand designer. This is when I was traveling the world, and I got to be a freelance designer, working for different brands across the world. Then I started to feel this nudge to take Starseed to the next level, and to take my passion of inspiring and empowering people in their spiritual journey, to go from doing it passively with product into a more direct one-on-one experience where I could make even more greater impact. That quantum leap into a spiritual coaching role was massive. I dealt with so many blocks when it came to identity. I can't even list them all right now. The top 3 for sure was imposter syndrome, limiting beliefs in general. I didn't have this vision of how I could be successful as a coach, or what does it look like to be successful as a coach, as I did with design. With design, to me, the identity was wrapped up around I'm creative and multidisciplinary, I'm driven, and I had awards and accolades to quantify that success. With the spiritual coach, I didn't really know. It's like I didn't really know of a blueprint to follow. I was just on a completely soul-led journey. So many other things had come up to, sharing my voice. I had to do some past life regressions. It was insane. But this quantum leap was all made possible because I started to tweak my self-concept. I was aware of this dynamic, and so I or started to become even more aware. So I worked with the ego on that. And I realized that this brand designer role, while still very passionate work, it was more or less the societal role I could live in. There was this convention, like you go to school, you can get a college degree in graphic design. There's like this track that I can just jump onto, and that's the path. And then I live and contend to everyone else's rules and their perceptions of me. To me, this is very much kind of like the fated job, or for me, the fated job. I'm not saying every role similar to this is exempt of being considered a sole purpose or a purpose, but for me, this was the construct. To me, it felt like this was 3D, and then this was 5D, if you know what I mean. So I had this rigidity at first. I remember thinking like this resistance pulling up against me. I was trying to get here. The heart was leading me and pulling me toward doing this one-on-one coaching. It started happening when I was traveling, but I didn't allow myself to go beyond my former and known identity, because at this point already, I'm like 18 years into my career. That's quite a long time. It's pretty embedded at that point. And so I had to really re-examine my self-concept and pull apart that identity. There was a grievance process. Don't get me wrong. Anytime you transition into a new way of being, your former identity goes through a death, and you have to allow that, and you have to bless it. You have to trust the process, allow it to fall away, so that you can step into a new skin, a new version of yourself that is birthed in the ethers, that was birthed in the pre-manifest, as I like to call it, that is just waiting for you to step into and take form, to bring it in and integrate it. The self-concept is always going to be limiting. You just have to figure out what is that box and reconstruct it to the new self-concept that you want it to be, because we're all different entities of self. Knowing how this works allows you to reverse engineer and to remold the clay at will. You can do this 100 times throughout your lifetime. You could do this once a month. I mean, our identities are constantly shape-shifting. We are shape-shifters. Then as I wrapped up on the coaching chapter, I took a job back in the industry of design again and became a creative director. That was still slightly different from my identity. It involved more leadership role. And then from there, I went to lead visual designer. And then fast forward to more recent now. But this is where things get even more explosive. Okay, so here I allowed myself to do one identity shift, and I became one new role. Fast forward to here. Lead visual designer, that chapter wrapped up like around this time last year, and I decided, okay, now I'm coming full circle, going back to the coaching thing again. I feel is primed and ready, learned a lot, and I'm ready to take this to the next level. So not only did I quantum leap again into coaching, and I really had to work with my self-concept again, but also I expanded into other roles of wellness that I felt called and passionate about serving. So that includes light tech consultant. I'm now kind of shifting into this YouTube creator role, and a dance fitness instructor. Yes, I'm also a dance fitness instructor. So I wanted to offer multifaceted tools to people in their wellness journey. And that's why I created the role, a mindfulness integration coach, to help you integrate tools from multiple areas of your mind, body, heart, and soul. Because that is what wellness looks like in the year 2025 and beyond, according to me. But so I hope that timeline of seeing, like, I can't believe I even did all this. Like, to me, still sometimes I'm like, when people ask me the question in year 2025, Teresa, what do you do? I simply just have to say, I do my passions. Because there's too many to list. There's just too many. It's overwhelming. And that's okay. We in society put a lot of emphasis of identity upon the places we go, the people we commune with, and especially the work that we do. The question is always like, hi, good to meet you. What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? We cannot be identified solely upon what we do when we have 100 other aspects of self, all working in network together to form the whole. And this, like water, my friends, is fluid. Allow yourself to shapeshift at will as you would like. And keep in mind, have a heads up that anytime you want to make a quantum leap into another version or another identity of self, it is going to encompass really diving in deep to understand what that self-concept is what that box or boundary line is that you've created that says, this is who I am, this is what I do, and break down those walls, reconstruct a new box. It may take some further examination of that self-concept, that box or identity that you put yourself in, and break down those walls, then reconstruct a new one based on what you want to be and what you want to be doing and the why. You may even need to look at some other examples of other people doing that thing or doing it in the style that you want, just so you can start to bring to light what that boundary line can be and just how far it can go. Try not to box yourself in. Try not to become so rigid in what your identity is, or you're going to be creating limitations that hold you back. And just one more real quick thing. If you want to explore this concept a little bit deeper, I loved how in Disney's Inside Out movies, they really put a beautiful visual metaphor and storyline around the self-concept. In Inside Out 2, I think they talk about it in Inside Out 1 as well, but it's definitely more emphasized in 2. This is a visual. It almost looks like sacred geometry, like a sacred geometry orb in the movie, which I really loved. That resonates with me very deeply. But they talked about how, self-concept is formed by our thoughts and beliefs and experiences that validate those thoughts and beliefs. And every time a belief was reinforced enough, it became a thread in the self-concept. So that is why I just always go back to this visual and check in with myself sometimes. I'm like, what is this thread? Like, is there new threads coming up in this? I like to just kind of visualize, pictorialize my mind in a visual sense, how my identity is shape-shifting constantly. Since I started this year, I have created 4 new threads at the very least. And there's another one. I can feel another one growing. It's like she's down here. She's just a little seedling, and she's going to become more realized. I can feel something coming and rooting up within me. So that is how self-concept in a visual context really, really works. Be aware of whatever limitations you may be holding yourself back from. Because if your identity is so rigid, you'll never get to the transformations or the new life or the new versions of yourself that you want to embody. And we are souls. We are multidimensional souls that came here to experience all of that life can offer. You have so much more to explore within yourself and to become. Allow the becoming. The resistance that you create is from the limitations and the rigidity of the identity you're holding on to. So before we wrap up here, I have 2 questions for you to journal. Number 1, are you holding yourself to an identity that is wanting to be shed at this time? Number 2, are there any versions of yourself that are wanting to rise up? Post your answers in the comments below. I would love to know what is coming up from you and what is falling away in terms of identity. How can you shed those? I hope this has been helpful, my friends. Please like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to comment below the answers to your questions. I look forward to seeing them. See you in the next video.